This is Breaking Down Security, and I am Brian Brake. Welcome back, listener. This is Brian, Mr. Boettcher, and Ms. Berlin for Breaking Down Security.
Hello.
What? You sound like you're in your car, Mr. Boettcher. What's going on?
How'd you know?
Oh, you sound great.
Is my little dot on the Zoom, is it moving?
Yeah, you're coming through on Tascam. You look okay. So you're pulling like a Jay Gorlick this week with you're stuck in traffic with security.
Yeah, I actually attended a security event. That's why I'm late.
Oh.
So, yeah, they had a panel of like-minded professionals down in Austin, so I attended that after work.
And
now I'm headed home.
What was this about?
Well, the topic of conversation was what's the next big thing in security? What's the next attack vector or whatever that's going to come around the pipe?
And what is that?
Well, okay, let's get into it. So basically, there were a couple of different answers, but the next big thing that we all came to a consensus to was sort of yesterday's big thing, right? It's all cyclical. I mean, we still haven't learned to do the basics in information security. I mean, for example, take the Mirai botnet. What was the attack vector there?
IoT devices.
It was default passwords.
Really?
That's what it was in the IoT devices, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, hello, the year 2000 called. I remember when if you found an Oracle database, the first thing you would try would be the Scott Tiger, right? Because one of the big wigs in Oracle name was Scott, and his cat was named Tiger, so that was the password.
Oh.
And typically, when you installed an Oracle database, that was the default username and password to log into the database. And most of the people installing Oracle didn't change that, right? Because they had no clue about security, or why would anybody log into my database? I mean, it's mine. How could they get access? Blah, blah, blah. So default passwords, yeah. And even before that, you had default passwords in other applications. So here we come again. It's just round 6 or whatever. Mirai botnet comes out, nearly takes down 1/6 of the internet, and it's all because of that old exploit, right?
Sure.
Again and again, we're not doing the basics in security, and I think that a lot of companies that are putting out software just don't have that mindset of security, and I think part of this function was, well, I guess the group helps small businesses with security. I mean, it's sort of a volunteer organization, I believe. I have to look more into it, but it's the first time I attended. It was a free event. They gave out beer, networking opportunity, etc.
Okay.
So.
Well, okay, so that's all well and good, and it sounds nice that, this is an organization that helps small businesses, with security. But what happens if the small business, one, doesn't want the help, or two, they don't even know that this exists as an opportunity? What are they doing for outreach?
You'd have to ask the founders. I don't know enough about the organization. I haven't, asked them how are they actually, because obviously there's more work than everybody in security has.
Mm-hmm.
There's small businesses popping up everywhere, and most of them don't know the first thing about security. And when you talk to them and you say, hey, I'd like to do a code audit, they're like, here, let me send you my source code via email.
Right.
And you're like, no. I don't want you to send me an email with your source code. Okay, that's step one, right? And
Yeah.
so there's no shortage of work out there, and that's why I like who was one of our former guests. She was like you've heard of account temps, where you can hire accountants temporarily to do your finances because you can't afford a full-time employee.
Mm-hmm.
How about CISO temps,
Yeah.
right? So you can be hired temporarily. Something like that model, I think, is sorely needed.
Well,
In fact, that's a good business model. If anybody wants to take that idea and run with it,
well,
just temp CISOs, right?
that was our
For an hour, hire me for 10 hours, right? That was her big deal.
Yeah, that was Kim Green. We did that one. I
Yeah.
think the middle of last year. She did the CISO as a service thing. I'll put a link in the show notes for that. So, yeah, really
Sorry,
awesome
I'm driving.
lady.
I didn't want to sacrifice having a wreck with thinking of Kim Green.
Yeah, yes, please, sir. Please, sir, do not have an
Keep your
accident.
eyes on the road.
Yeah, don't drive with your knees like I do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So
Only when I put on my makeup.
yeah. So I mean, okay. So this organization, who's running it? It's in Austin, right? So I mean, there's already a fantastic InfoSec community over there and hacker community. What are they doing? Obviously, some people we might know is running that, right?
I have no idea.
Well, you saw the presentation. Who was giving the prezo?
Well, they had a bunch of guys in the security community on a panel. Right?
Okay.
So it wasn't necessarily the guys running it.
Yeah.
Okay. Joel Scambry was one on the panel.
Right.
That I recognized, a former guest on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can reach out to others.
Yeah, let me find out from him and see if we can get somebody on to talk about it more in depth. So,
I think you asked how they were reaching out, Brian, and I think that's like probably one of the biggest challenges for small businesses. Like there's no real good way to reach out to small businesses, right? There are, they aren't looking for that kind of stuff. So other than, what they get from the news or papers or whatever, there's not really much. I think it's really hard to get through to them.
yeah. Well,
There's knowledge
there's no,
that
medium.
there is a problem out there. They just don't know.
Yeah.
They think their IT department is actually their security department. I think there was an interview, a Wall Street Journal reporter, and his conclusion was basically, the IT department has to do all the security things now. And I think that's dangerous. While it may be good to have a lot of people in IT knowledgeable in security, their main goal is uptime.
Yeah.
And if it's going to affect uptime, it's not going to get implemented. And that's why you need a security team, you need a CISO to say, now wait a minute, let's take a step back from uptime, and let me tell you, by not patching the system, right, how it's going to affect uptime long term, right, or how it's going to affect our bottom line at some point. You have to have conversations. You have to have somebody knowledgeable to have conversations about, how these security tools could help the business overall, and give them data to back it up. I recently had a conversation with one of the business leaders in a particular vertical in our company, and they didn't know what an intrusion detection system was, and they didn't know what a WAF was. They had some idea, but they didn't know how that was going to help him. All he was interested in was, how is this going to affect my app? How is it going to bring down my app? What are the risks? Is my throughput going to suffer for it? Are my customers going to have a bad experience if I put these security tools in place? And so my strategy was, okay, well, let's just put one of these things in for now and just have it listen, right? And then collect data. And then I will show you exactly what's taking place in your environment. And then once he saw that he was getting attacked 50 times a day from all over the world, and these attacks involved, you know, you know, uh, 40,000 hits on his application, and it came to a point after a few weeks to where the guy said, "You know what? I can't take this anymore. This is a no-brainer. We have to implement this as soon as possible." Right. So now we're in talks with the business to move from just purely detection to a active blocking mode, right?
Oh.
Because his business cannot afford SQL injection attempts from countries all over the world that his app just can't afford to go down because of it, or data from customers being lost if such an attack. And we had a conversation on how these types of things could be window shopping by attackers. Because if you look bad on the outside, chances are you're going to be bad on the inside. So you're ripe for hackers to just start attacking you if you look bad on the outside.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have to have those conversations with people who may not realize how valuable security is for their business. All they're thinking about is downtime.
So, Amanda, when people reach out to your organization, is it very similar that they didn't know they needed security, or did they? Are they required to have a third party monitor them for compliance reasons? I mean, because Mr. Boettcher there's mentioning that small businesses often need security, but I don't think they actually know, or they don't know how to get that, or like you mentioned, the IT departments that they outsource to, because I don't know how many small businesses actually have that. I mean, this also smacks of the cavalry. It's like when they first started the cavalry to do medical device security and car device security. They, not only did the cavalry not necessarily know who to reach out to, but the car companies didn't even know that they needed to reach out to anybody. The only reason they found out about a lot of this stuff was in the media. So, I mean, how are companies how and why are companies reaching out to your organization to do, security?
If we're just talking about small businesses, they aren't. We don't have really any small businesses that we work with. It's all like medium to global, footprint. And I'm just worried more about, all the bigger players also have horrible security, but at least they're talking about it.
Yeah.
I think so an example I'm thinking of, so I write for a business journal, it's like 4 counties around me in Northern Ohio. Mm-hmm. And I was writing about security topics like we talk about every other month, and that's what they had asked for. And I then wrote kind of like a piece that was directed more towards that my mom had asked me to write. It was super easy things that you can do for your security. I talked about turning on 2-factor auth and selecting good passwords and patching Windows, just the plain stuff a normal user can do.
Yeah.
And then I got an email out of the blue from the editor saying, we want more pieces like that because it speaks to our audience more.
Ah, okay.
Well, but it's they're businesses that are supposed to be reading this material.
Yeah. And
they're not even to the point where they can even have read an article that's, and it wasn't I'm not super technical. It's normal, normal business related, technical articles on security, and it still wasn't even at that level.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking anywhere from 4 to 200 employees, that size of small business. I think they have absolutely no idea.
So, when we say small business, we mean ones that aren't funded with Brazilian dollars from some VC company, right? We're talking mom and pop, I don't want to say middle America kind of stuff, but like, you put out a shingle and you've got, this widget, that you worked at a company for 20 years and now you want to go out on your own and, you don't have $1 million. So they have this widget and they put it out and they don't have $1 million and they're not thinking about security. And those are the people we need to cater to, not, the ones that are flush with money from some angel somewhere in the Silicon Valley that are, going for free beer Fridays and stuff like that.
Right.
But they also have security issues. It's just a different security issue. They don't care. Right. They're just trying to get to market. And then they worry about security after.
Yeah, and a lot of times they don't have to worry about compliance either.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like for PCI, if you're under so many thousand credit card transactions per year or whatever, you don't have to worry about being PCI compliant.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
they don't even have anybody to answer to at that point.
See that bothers me because it seems to me that if you're wanting to get to those small businesses, the ones that aren't funded by VC, you'd have to go to things like, I don't know, Kiwanis clubs or local business type organizations that meet every month or every other week for the luncheon buffet or whatever that they have at the local place, where it's local businesses, local owners who, they may run credit cards at a bigger rate during the tourist season, but they don't think about that. That securing the credit card terminals may be a thing. And they don't want to secure the terminals necessarily because that's an additional expense that they'd have to find from somewhere else. But
that's the paradox, right? That's the paradox. You have to know about security to go looking for somebody to help you with security. Mm-hmm. If those two things don't come into play, I mean, it's game over.
And there's so many of them and so few of us.
Yeah. And really, I think, the small business owners are probably outnumber the big companies, but the big companies, of course, make millions of dollars so they can afford to, involve themselves in that. So, I would suggest if you live in a smaller city that you maybe try to find the local business organizations or the local chamber of commerce even at your company and or in your town, and maybe reach out to them and say, do you have contacts for people that are looking to need security or or processing credit cards. Ransomware is becoming a big thing, and if a small business gets hit with ransomware, it could shutter the business. So, I mean, you don't want to use fear, uncertainty, and doubt like that. But I mean, there's always ways that you can help locally when you're to help out local businesses, and it could come back and help you in the end. So I know. Wait a minute, didn't you give a talk at something recently with some people, and you socially engineered a credit card out of somebody?
I didn't do that.
Oh.
I was afraid. I already scared the shit out of those poor guys. It was a senior center.
Okay.
And it was like their men's group.
Right.
And I went and I talked to them about credit card fraud.
Okay.
And they said thank you for scaring the shit out of us when I left.
Well, see, that's the kind of outreach we need, though. Because those people
and scare them. I was, teaching them what not to do and what to do.
That's right, scared straight. That's right.
Yeah, steps they could take, and they were still extremely terrified.
But no, I mean that's for example, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for small local businesses. The bigger companies, they can throw money around, they can take care of themselves. But if you're a local city, like I live in a town of 4,000 or 5,000 people, tons of businesses in the downtown area, big touristy joint. They're ripe for the picking for fraud or for the little credit card skimmers on top of those things, and that stuff will never make the news. I mean, and if companies ransomwared, oh, great, okay, well, that's all right.
Do you want to stop now and
Okay. So we took a short break there. Apparently, Zoom on the free or basic accounts, which we were running on Miss Berlin, only goes for 40 minutes, and we had 10 minutes
Yay.
left. So she was furiously typing, "Oh my God, we only have 10 minutes left!"
I don't know if I should interrupt.
No, of course you should have interrupted, because that would have sucked if we'd all been killed. So,
right.
All right. So Miss
I lost
Amanda.
my thought pattern. It went over a cliff.
That's okay.
Sorry.
We'll try to
You're
get.
not driving, so
I'm not driving.
Sweet.
right.
Yeah, Mr. Boettcher's safely at home now, so it's better. So we'll reach out to Joel Scambry and see if we can't get any more information about the panel that Mr. Boettcher was on. So Amanda went to a couple cons recently. She went to CircleCityCon and she went to 614Con. And
People knew me there from the podcast.
Now that's a dirty lie. People don't listen to this thing.
No, at 614Con,
I
had a guy come up to me. He was one of the other speakers, and he
Really?
says, "Amanda Berlin, like from the podcast." I'm like, "Oh, yes."
Now,
So,
you had that
pretty
on your
sure it was
intro,
Jane.
right?
I kind of made my slides at the last minute, and I forgot to put that on there.
Look, you're our marketing arm.
Sorry.
So
I know
you have one
I
job,
know.
and
I know.
I make coffee. You're the
mentioned
marketing
it.
person, and Boettcher's the brains of the group. We already talked
know.
about this.
I know. I mentioned it on the O'Reilly podcast, though. If
Okay,
that helps.
that's cool.
Like cross promoting there. No.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good. So
There's way more people that listen to that than actually went to 614Con.
that's cool. So Circle CityCon, you said you saw a fantastic talk from somebody from Duo.
I did. She is awesome. Her name's Kendra Cooley. She talked. I like what she did. She kind of matched up incident response in like the cybers with incident response for like EMT firefighter type stuff.
Really?
Yeah, it was really cool the way that she kind of put it together. So,
You mean like takes the same framework that first responders use and made like a cyber incident?
Yeah, it was called something like it doesn't always have to be lights and sirens or something like that, meaning like you don't always have to do all hands on deck for every IR incident. Like there's different levels, that kind of stuff.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, certain departments may have, an incident response that doesn't affect the whole company, and if you put the whole company into one incident response, then you might be missing the actual thing that's going on over here, which would be the misdirection. So that makes sense. Interesting.
That was really cool.
Levels.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This is a magenta level event,
Yes. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
DEFCON orange or whatever.
Very nice. And what was your talk on at Circle City?
I did not give one there. I gave one at 614Con.
Okay. And so what was your talk over there at 614 about?
So a little bit about 614Con, I guess. So they try and do like all underground stuff, so they don't record anything.
Really?
It's at this brewery in Columbus, and really, really cool. Like they did a really good job with it.
Okay.
And they have a hacker space like across the way, so like there's the con going on, and they can walk over the hacker space and do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So what is 614? Is that the area code? Or?
Yeah, that's one of the Columbus area codes.
Right. Okay.
And I talked about some research I had done and my first major Python project that scraped a website.
Oh, very nice. So
Yeah.
did you learn that from the class we did here, or did you?
I didn't. No, I learned it on years of trial and error of trying to actually learn Python.
Okay.
And I have been trying to learn Python for like 2 full years, and it just never sticks.
Yeah.
And Lee actually helped me write a little tiny thing when I was doing my taxes for something. And I've had this idea of this talk or research that I wanted to do that would log into a site and scrape usernames and IDs. And I could correlate those with database dump information that I have access to as well.
Oh, okay.
So
very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Oh, is that what you were talking about with the Selenium scripts and stuff in chat the other day?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Selenium's good stuff too, but you did it with Python. You didn't use Selenium.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
URL lib and find and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah. Right on. So, all right. So we're actually going to get now to the topic that we were going to discuss tonight, which I was poking around in my 504 index because I'm having to make the index for my Sec 504 class, which I scheduled for July the 11th.
Yeah.
God, now I've got my feet in the fire. I got to study now, not suck, and take my practice exams. So, some of the stuff that I was going through, it was the last part in book 5 where they were talking about, keeping access and, steganography and some of the other stuff that they had to jumble in at the last minute. So it was like tunneling connections and all this stuff. And I was thinking about the movie Selena and the scene where Edward James Olmos is driving down the road and all the kids are in the car and Selena's in the back and he's like, we got to be more Mexican than the Mexicans and we've got to be more American than the Americans and we have to be both of them at the same time and it's exhausting. And the thing I was thinking about with InfoSec was I was like, we've got to be the best dev out there. We have to be the best hacker out there. We have to be the best, sales and marketing person out there all at the same time. And it's, for blue teamer people, it's exhausting to try to be all of those things at once. So yeah, I was trying to, look at that and, and it got me to poking around with the common weakness of enumerations again. And I found this PDF that Gary McGraw co-authored called The 7 Pernicious Kingdoms. And I remembered we talked about that with him on the show a few months ago and also in our book club that we had with his book. And, it's quite an interesting document. It talks about how they took the classification of all of the vulnerabilities of the weaknesses and enumerations and broke them down into basically 7 kingdoms. And the idea was that the category names, while useful, and I'm quoting from the PDF here, it says the category names, while useful to some groups of researchers, were too generic to be quickly intuitive to a developer in the context of day-to-day work. So I was thinking along the lines of how do you, you're the blue team guy and you've got to be the best dev out there. So you've got to explain to the devs how to dev things. So you've got to be the best dev and the best hacker and it's exhausting. So, this is I was going through some of this and trying to figure out how to use this to explain to developers, how you can help with the kingdoms and discuss this stuff. So, the taxonomy as they broke it down was input validation and representation, API abuse, 3 security features, 4 time and state, 5 error, 6 code quality, which they probably put it 6 that way. By the time you get there with the devs, they've embraced 1 through 5, hopefully. Number 7, encapsulation, and they put a little star for environment, which is its own thing. So I wanted to discuss maybe number 1 and number 2 if we had time, and talk about what the kingdoms are and why they wrote this PDF in the first place. And you can look at this. You can just look up 7 Pernicious Kingdoms on Google.pdf, or you can go into the show notes and it'll be there. So a kingdom, according to the definitions in here, is a collection of phyla that share a common theme. And phylum, of course, are specific types of more specific types of kingdoms. So, what's the name of the classification system for animals? I forget, but it's a kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species.
I can't believe you remembered that.
King Philip caught only 5 gray squirrels.
Biology was my favorite in high school.
I love me, man. Miss Dressel, science class, 5th grade. Miss Dressel, I love Miss Dressel. Kingdom, phylum, class, order.
Statistics or what?
No, science, man. Biology, like science class, where you classify in the animals, like Animalia, Chordata, all the way down to Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens is a genus and a species, and depending on they're trying to create new versions of the human species in science fiction novels. But the idea is you take your kingdom and you take one of the 7 kingdoms for input validation in this case. and you break it down into additional phylum class orders. It doesn't get that generic in this. I mean, you've got kingdoms and then class of those things. So for like input validation, of course, is buffer overflows. Writing outside of bounds, allocating memory allocated memory that can corrupt data, crash programs, command injection. All the OWASP stuff appears to be in here. Cross-site scriptings, your integer overflows, so SQL injections. So they get fairly specific too.
I like how they modeled it around the whole science thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense because
it makes more sense. Yeah.
You grew up with that, and I hate to say that everything can be classified, and they do a fairly decent job. I mean, they do have escape, like a leftover category for the the stars for the environment, which not everything is going to fit properly. What is this? Cladistics. What is a cladistic? Method of classification of animals. No. It was some other kind of. Y'all just talk amongst yourselves about how difficult it is to get a.
Raise your hands if you think it's cladistics.
It ain't cladistics, I'm telling you. Animal taxonomy. Anyway,
cladistics is the new thing, which is pretty damn old, to tell you the truth. It's like from the 80s.
I'm gonna get you all.
You know what I'm saying?
I'll get you all. So
you were still in school in the 80s, right, Brian?
Yes. How old do you think I am? Oh, man.
I wasn't in school yet.
You weren't in school in the 80s? That's a dirty lie.
I was in kindergarten in 89.
Wow.
Wait, and you have kids already? Damn.
Wow.
I'll be 33 in 2 weeks.
I'm freaking old, man. God, this kills me. Anyway, all right. So, they did break this down by the OWASP top 10. So SQL injection is fairly generic. I would argue that they go down to things like struts. So if you do Apache struts or anything like that, they talk about validators without form fields and validators turned off. And I think
I have no idea what any of that is.
I don't either, because I don't do struts. I'm sorry. That would be why it'd be like you have to be the best dev. So if you're in a struts environment, you need to at least speak the language so that you can explain this stuff to people. So yeah, I mean they break it down. Let me see. He says to better understand the relationship between the file our taxonomy offers, the vulnerability is present in a function. So yeah, he's talking about how they're talking about they have code in here as well from what I saw.
I like how they have password management, empty password, and config file happens all the time, or hard coded password all the time.
Well, okay, so why do devs put in hard coded passwords?
Because it's easier.
Nah, is it faster? Is it easier, or is it they just forgot to take out some testing material before they
Could be that too.
flagged it? I mean,
when I just did my Python thing, it was way easier just to leave the username and password in there.
now see, you're not part of the solution; you're part of the problem.
But I didn't care about it. Like that's like.
Are you going to put this on GitHub?
It's already on GitHub.
Oh,
The username and password's out there, but it doesn't matter because the account took me like 2 minutes to create.
okay. So yeah, I was I was reading through this. It's only 8 pages, but it seems to work fairly well. And then I went over, I was going over to the CWE site, which I think is probably what every developer should have to train against, because there's a ton of stuff on there, and they're adding stuff all the time.
It'd be cool if they came out with a cert.
A cert, like a CIRT, like incident response, or like a certification?
Like a certification.
Oh, right. Well, what would it be about?
I don't know. Like everything on this. Like how not to do any of this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's MITRE, so it's the same folks who do the vulnerability lookups. So,
yeah.
CVE, I saw 2017, and they're up to like 1 million now.
Yeah.
What did they do that on purpose for, like future proofing?
Oh, I don't know.
Because I looked up CVE 2017 like 1000363, which I believe is that new stack corruption bug that they were talking about. Where, and that one actually came up. Let me read that one here. It's the small stack guard stuff.
Oh, right.
Where if you're running, a lot of OSs on your VM stack, the way that each OS allocates memory can cause issues. So there's like a whole new kernel patch out. There's patches for Ubuntu, CentOS, Debian, SE Linux enabled distros. You basically have to patch everything: glibc, all your ld.so and suid root binaries. So yeah, if you have not heard that, it's fairly decent write up on Qualys's website, which I'll have in the show notes for that. But yeah, it even affects all the BSDs and stuff. So if you're what I'm surprised is this didn't get a fancy name, an icon, theme song, mascot, all that stuff. It was just straightforward, right on Qualys's website, and they just took it for what it was. So,
do you think they're getting away from that?
I think Qualys got away from it. I think if it was anybody else, they might have tried to, set up a merchandise store and, all that stuff. So,
yeah.
Yeah. So
I've got a story.
Okay.
When this was probably 10 years ago, I wasn't in security at the time.
Yeah.
But we had this app, and it was really important. Did a lot of financial stuff in the app. And we had an issue with the app's performance, and one of the developers showed me a secret page where he could just type in a form any database query that he wanted, and it would just run it. It would just pass it from there to the database, all the privileges you want. And that was kind of the thinking, not really back then, but I think even today it's the thinking of developers like, hey, if I have a problem and I need to troubleshoot, here's a great way to do that. Or if I need to run some sort of a transaction into our system, I can run it here, and I don't have to go through change control or go to the DBAs and have them do it and go through all the testing. I can just do it here. It's on a production system. I know what I'm doing because I wrote the app.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
and I think that's just the thinking, right? You just don't have the mindset to think, well, how can this be abused? I think that's where we come in. We kind of think about things differently. We take things apart, right? We're sort of the anti-QA. QA is like, does this piece of software do what it's supposed to do?
Yeah.
Whereas we're like, does it do what it's not supposed to do?
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So it's that type of thinking that companies need to have on their staff, no matter what position.
Yeah. Well,
right?
QA.
And it just so happens that those guys gravitate towards security.
Well, yeah, QA and testing are thinking along the lines of it works as we want it to.
Yep.
We are trying to, well, we as in we, the royal we. Information security says, well, I want to buy, -12 of that thing, or I want to, make this API call and, be able to, dump database. As long as the test cases that the QA and the testers use verify functionality of the application, then it's going to work. What we need to do in information security, we have to be the best tester ever. Oh, wait. Sorry. I got into my mode again. We need to inject test cases in that are going to check for those things. If we're worried about input validation and we know the basic underlying technology of whatever it is we're trying to build, we should have some idea on how to break it. And if we can't do security testing ourselves, red teaming or what have you, we can catch some of that in the testing and QA section by asking them to add additional test cases.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you remember this, but
I do.
When you and I were working together at the place, we showed one of the developers that we could take what their app or their client side piece was talking to the server, and we could inject our own stuff into there.
Mm-hmm.
And we showed them, here's the app we're using. Here's how you can do it too, because there's a vulnerability. All you have to do is, change this field. Yep. Your client side checks, who gives a crap?
Yeah.
Right? If I'm an attacker, I don't care about client side checks.
Yep.
Right? I'm going to inject into the server whatever the hell I want. And their eyes lit up, and it was like, wow, you could actually do this.
Yep.
I never, and then of course they're smart enough to know, yes, it can be done. They just didn't think of that. Yeah. And they didn't think that there were tools out there that could actually intercept the network traffic and change it on the fly.
Yep. Yeah, and this goes back to our initial conversation of, not a small business, but if you treat your developers as though, as that small business in this case, they don't know that they don't need this stuff or, these tools. We got to empower developers to have these tools. So in our case, Mr. Boettcher and I showed them Burp Suite. We gave them a free copy of Burp Suite, and we said, okay, you can edit the request before it gets sent to the server, and you can intercept the request as it's coming back from the server. So not only can you get past your form validation, which is on your front end before it gets sent to the server, you can also modify the request the server is sending back to the client and cause issues as well. And they're like, oh, like a monkey touch monolith moment, It was like, oh. So
yeah. And then of course, after a few weeks, they probably were using Burp Suite better than we were.
That is a true statement. But that's good. But I mean, you want to be rendered useless in many cases in that respect. You don't want them to necessarily have to keep coming back to you. You don't want them. You want them to continue using the product. I mean, and that gives them more ideas to want to come back to you for additional information.
Yeah. And I think knowledge is power. Now at that point, they knew that this sort of thing could be done.
Yeah.
And they probably changed the way they thought about input validation. Right?
Mm-hmm. At least you hope they did.
Yeah. So, Amanda, how do you when you are you on client engagements at all anymore?
I don't travel a whole lot. I have my own clients, but it's always, for the most part, it's always over the phone or through tickets or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going out on site next week, but that's been the first time in a while.
Do you guys ever pimp out other products like Burp or Zap or, free tools, or do you guys have your own specific in-house tools?
No. So that's our level of what my position, that's like my job. So not only do I tell them what they should be doing in Splunk and what they could be doing better by sending whatever logs, I get to tell them, hey, you shouldn't be doing this, or you could be doing this better by using this tool. I can really recommend anything. Probably not another SIM, but
yeah, you should probably be using an elk stack here. Yeah, that Splunk thing, it's okay, but elk, you want to use that.
It's a passing fad.
It's about $500,000 cheaper for you, so yeah.
Yeah. I like being able to say I don't know how much Splunk costs because I never deal with any of the money side of it, which I never want to. Because,
it's just rumors.
Yeah.
I mean, how much could it really cost?
You know what? That's an interesting thing. We were talking about that in my office. So I'm going to tell a little story. So we're buying some new software, and we've had this software in the past, but we're upgrading it. We're making it larger. In this case, it's a vulnerability scanner. So we use one that is made by a company called Tenable. And, we're upgrading our network. We're getting a larger IP band. And, I come back and I go, okay, yeah, we're going to get this one, but it costs this much more. And my colleague who I work with, who's far smarter than me, because I hired him because he's far smarter than me, on purpose. Trust me. He's a smart dude. He's like, you probably shouldn't bring up the cost every time you talk about the product. And I'm like, well, why not? Because, they're going to care about the cost. And he's like, yeah, but it's the cost of doing business. You don't have to say it costs X amount of dollars. It's the cost of doing business. So this is a product you need. This is a product you need for compliance. This is a product you need to secure your environment, to be more secure.
And to do it well. Of course, there's free, there's free stuff that you could get other than the one that you're going to end up using.
Yeah.
You get what you pay for.
Yeah, the podcast isn't sponsored by Tenable or anything like that, and it never will be.
Or Splunk.
Or Elk, or, whatever. Burp, yeah. So, yeah, so, I mean, when you're going to your boss and you say, hey, we need this, the first thing you should never say is, this is how much it costs. You should just say, this is the cost of doing business. We need this. Don't
use that. I don't think you should use that phrase when you go to your boss.
No. Well, okay. So let me ask you something.
I think it's just assumed that it's the cost of doing business.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of like my way or the highway type thinking.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, and so
depends on the relationship, I guess. But
yeah, and it really depends on how many options you have. If there's only a handful of options that do exactly what you need to do, one, you need to come with why you're choosing this one, what's the uptake on, how much is it going to take to set all this up? Not how much, but I mean how much time it will take to set it up and get it running and everything. Cost should be not the first thing they look at, because if you're looking at the price, I've
done those cost benefit analysis stuff for different software, different hardware platforms or whatever, and boy, are those just a gigantic pain.
Yeah,
I mean, it's nice to prove that whatever you're using is either beneficial, depending on how much it costs or whatever. But yeah, I think a lot of the time it's just assumed that that's the cost of doing business.
Right.
A lot of I just assume if people are talking to me and they're already customers, that they already have had that conversation elsewhere of how much it costs, because otherwise I wouldn't be talking to them.
True. Or they've been told by their auditor that they need to get something.
Right.
So, yeah. That's good. Yeah, it's good to actually, have, real world examples. Again, growing company, you have your growing pains, and it's nice to see those things. So yeah, my colleague, who, like I said, is far smarter than me, I got learned this week to not go, oh, it costs $150,000 or something. It doesn't cost $150K. I'm just, not putting out real numbers, but yeah, so I got to remember to fix my delivery when I talk about things. So, and don't not haggle with your vendor. That's always good. Right. They give you the initial number, go, yeah, we're really only looking to spend this amount. It's like, and they'll come back. They will most likely give you a somewhat better deal. I won't say it won't be, like 85% off, but
Well, if you really, really, really know what you're doing and you find like 5 flaws in their product, they might give you 85% off.
Is that a true story?
Ooh.
I can't say. I cannot confirm nor deny that.
Oh, gods. Let me turn the recording off. Okay, it's off. Really. It's off.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case.
No, I'm just kidding. All right. Yeah, no, seriously, we're gonna have to. I need to figure out who you're talking about there. So, I'm done for the week. We're gonna have another interview next week, hopefully. And we had a great talk last week, Mr. Boettcher. You missed our good friend Hector Munseeger.
I know, man.
Did you listen to that one?
It's on my list. It's on my listening list.
Wow.
Of course I'd listen to it, because by the time this goes out, I would.
Oh, okay.
All
right.
Oh, right.
Very cool.
So yes, I did listen to it.
Very cool. All right. So yeah, it was great. Mr. Munseeger is always a good speaking interview type thing. led a very interesting life. I have Outlawed Tech on my DVR, and I've got to watch it. But yeah, so if you get a chance to see him, he's going to be hopefully B-Sides West Virginia, he said. So that'll be nice if he can make it to those. So.
All right, so I recorded a ransomware,
right,
sort of a bonus podcast, if you will.
Yep.
Right, so that'll be coming out either in 5 minutes or maybe in 3 days.
It'll probably be 5 minutes. I think I'm going to add it on to the end of this one. So
this is going to be a long one.
Kind of. So, well, okay, let's get it over with then. Let's get on to that so we can do the ransomware thing. It's a little bit about fileless malware, right? We did a show about this about 8 or 9 weeks ago with Mr. Goff, but this is like an update, right?
No, not fileless. It's ransomware.
It's just ransomware.
So what you can do in your environment to help mitigate this ransomware threat, because we went through iterations. This was about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And we were like, okay, here's the tactics we see now. Here's the tactics that we think are going to happen. So we sort of got prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And we hadn't had a ransomware attack in quite some time.
Nice.
So we didn't think it was a big deal. So he goes to B-Sides Austin and he has 2 talks. And he says, well, I'll let the audience decide which talk. Do you want to hear the IR talk, or do you want to hear the ransomware talk? And like 95% of the people there raised their hand for the ransomware.
Sure.
And we were shocked. We were going, really? Is this that big a deal right now? So what he did was, talk about what we did to mitigate the threat, and sort of put the kibosh on ransomware in our environment, and just some simple blocking and tackling you can do in your environment to
that is great.
To help with ransomware, but malware in general too.
Okay.
Yeah, so that I'm gonna have to definitely listen to like tomorrow, because a large portion of my talk this weekend, and then also the training I'm giving is around tying different common threats to kill chain steps and mitigation and monitoring and stuff. So
okay.
I'm sure, like I've read a whole bunch and researched as much as I possibly could.
Yeah.
Short amount of time I've had, but yeah, I hope I got everything.
All right.
Yeah, it's only 20 minutes, so check it out.
Yeah.
Everybody check it out. It's probably worth it just to get some techniques and basically what we did was take away the double click. You cannot double click and get infected, right, with these ransomware. Right?
Okay.
It basically takes power out of the user's hand. They just can't double click and execute.
So you just
something
gave
that's
them all
gonna
Mac.
You can double click on it.
There's Mac ransomware now. There's Mac ransomware. Yeah, don't get all complacent and stuff. So, all right. So let's get on now. Amanda, this will post next week's, or actually in a couple days, but the audio's on our Google Drive. So just a little behind the scenes there. So, all right. So you said you're going to give some training this weekend. Where are you going to be at, Amanda?
No, I'm giving a talk this weekend.
Talk. Okay.
Yes. I have 2 more training engagements online with Lee.
Right.
We're doing like a half user education and awareness, half IDS IPS
Wow.
training. It's 3 hours. If you have a Safari subscription, it's free.
That's an O'Reilly thing, huh? Wow.
Yeah. And then
Awesome.
I'm also giving training it's not training, it's called a tutorial, because it's a 3-hour thing at O'Reilly Security Conference in October.
Is that in New York with Andrew and Jerry from Defensive Security? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, they were teasing that on their last show. So, they're going to be there at the place in New York. So, that's cool. All right.
It'll be my first time visiting New York.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I visited a couple years ago. I went on a cruise from there to Bermuda and back. Bermuda's fantastic. Besides
York,
Bermuda, that should be a real thing. So, okay. So yeah, Mr. Boettcher, you got your ransomware talk coming up after the end of this show. CircleCityCon, you had a good time at that, like you said. Okay. So let's see. All right. So before we go, next class, the class we're doing right now with Miss Sunny and our web application pen test course is going crazy good. So our next class, which starts on July 10th, is with Mick Douglas. Mick Douglas is going to do some PowerShell for incident responders and beginners. It's kind of a beginner/intermediate course. We're going to basically start off with basic PowerShell. It's going to be 5 sessions. We're going to run it a lot like how we're doing our current training, where you sign up for $20 and you go to the class. Or if you want the videos, it's going to be $10 instead of $9, because I figured out how we're going to do that. So
I did have a couple people ask. So Patreon is a monthly thing?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't need to pay $20 a month forever.
Yeah, no, God, no.
I had a couple people ask me that.
Yeah, no, once the class is over, we don't expect you to stay there forever.
Yeah.
If you don't, you can drop it down.
You can totally pay $20 a month forever.
I completely understand how people would feel like, well, I can't afford $20 forever. No, if you just want to pay $20 for the class, and then
content's worth $20.
If you want to stop supporting us altogether, that's fine. Or if you just want to drop it to like $1, that's fine. I don't care. You don't even have to support the show if you just want to do the training. So Mick's class starts on 10 July, goes to August 1st. So what you'll want to do is, before the class ends, if you don't want to get charged another $20 for the next month, you'll want to dump your Patreon down lower. Once you sign up for the class, you get charged $20. So we're going to get our money if you go to the class. So you don't have to dump out at the end, but you're going to, yeah. So if you have any questions, contact us on our Slack. You can sign up for the Slack at breaksec.signup.team. And we'll be doing some PowerShell stuff inside of there, like we're doing with our pen testing course. So there'll be homework. So there'll be a channel where you can go in and talk to Mick and myself and everyone else and all the 450 other people who are, well, they're not 450. We've got about 30 people who are regularly on our chat at any one time. You can join us on there at breaksec.signup.team. You can also reach out to us on Twitter. There's the official show Twitter is at Breaksec, BRAKESEC. You said the guy at 614Con, his name was possibly James Kang. You said he was one of the speakers?
Pretty sure that was him.
Okay. James, my last name is Brake, like on a car, BRAKE. Breaking is just kind of a ha-ha funny thing. Some people don't get it. It's cool. I get people all the time. It's all right. Miss Amanda, how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to?
On Twitter or our Slack channel at InfoSister.
InfoSister.
InfoSystir.
Okay. Mr. Boettcher, last but not least, how would people get a hold of you?
Get me on the DM.
Ooh.
Right, I'm on Twitter.
He's all hip with the kids these days.
Sliding into those DMs.
Yes. And so what's your Twitter?
At Boettcher Pwned.
Boettcher Pwned. Okay. And you're on Slack maybe once a month, so that's cool. Mm-hmm. I really wish you were on there more, because you were very smart and you participate.
Hey, I put on like a bunch of stuff today, dude.
I know, I saw you. All right, so stick around after the audio. There will be some audio from Mr. Boettcher, and Goff's going to be on there. Mr. Goff, right? Michael?
Yep.
Okay. So you can listen to us on iTunes, Google Play. Please leave some feedback if you want to. If you want to support us on Patreon and you don't want to join the class, we have a $1, a $5, and a like a $10, $1, $2, and $5 level if you want to do that. If you just want to drop some a tip or something. That was it. Everyone have a great week. Bringing Down Security's out. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, I'm here with Michael Goff, and he has done a couple of talks on ransomware. He went to B-Sides Austin, and I was there, and he said, okay, how many of you want me to do my incident response talk?
versus how many people want to do my ransomware talk, and like 90% of the people in the audience wanted to hear about ransomware, which was surprising to you. Why?
Well, because we don't have a lot of problems with ransomware, and I think by now there's been enough talk about certain things you can do, and maybe you've gone out and drank the EDR Next Gen AV Kool-Aid and bought something to improve it. There's been enough cases where I think people have taken some action. I know we have, and it turns out the reality that's not the case. People still obviously are having a problem with ransomware, which we'll talk about what happened when I gave the next ransomware talk, which was interesting.
At Rocky Mountain InfoSecCon.
Yep.
Right. So you did those two talks, and like the day you did the Rocky Mountain Con, that's when this big WannaCry came out, right? That day. And you just happened to be doing a ransomware talk at the con.
Yeah, the timing of that is pretty interesting. So I'm at B-Sides, Denver the next day, and everybody's talking about the impact of that, and people are scrambling a lot of cases, checking in, watching their emails, and I'm like, yeah, I got nothing. And everybody started asking me, how do you have nothing? Well, you should have gone to my talks. So from my perspective, it surprises me that people haven't done some of these very basic things still, because they're free. You don't have to buy anything.
So very basic things. Let's talk about, where do we start? The infection vector itself. How do you get or how do most people get ransomware to begin with?
Well, like in my talk, I talk about I discuss where the vectors coming in of ransomware. Most ransomware that people see is via email. Right? Most malware people see is coming in via email. Right? Most even targeted attacks, APT, they're targeting phishing, spear phishing, water coolering your company. And so email attachments are the way that the majority of ransomware comes into a company. And the user is your infector. They double click the attachment in the email.
All right. So let's talk about the progression that you did at your company when ransomware started to become a problem, which was a couple years ago. You started seeing this become a new thing. And then, so what'd you do at first?
Well, obviously, several years ago, like more than several, probably 3-4 years ago, ransomware started hitting the radar, and occasional here, occasional there. But about 2 years ago, suddenly it got a little more organized, and we started seeing regular campaigns, if not weekly, for sure monthly, where 1, 5, 15, sometimes 30, 50, even up to 100 start occurring. And in a 2-year period, we saw a very noticeable increase where the graph was probably going up at a 30-degree angle, or maybe even looking like a very wide bell curve. And it was very noticeable that if we didn't do something or make some changes, that the quantities that we were going to receive was going to go off the charts. Now, we had obviously analyzed malware in the lab, so we kind of saw what the makeup of these ransomware were, what kind of attachments they were sending us, what kind of things happened when you initially detonated them before the ransomware. And that gave us enough information to make some determinations for changes to our email gateway.
All right, so how'd you determine what changes were supposed to take place? You just looked at what was coming and then what kind of infrastructure you had and see how you can, I guess, block, right? What kind of emails they were based on analytics?
Well, it turned out as we analyzed these in the lab, there was a pattern. And the pattern was what was the default behavior in Windows when a user double-clicked these. They're all JavaScript or some sort of scripting attachment. So JS, JSE, WSF, WSH, HTA. So these have automatic executions in Windows. And so they were taking advantage of the fact that a user will double-click this attachment and it will detonate. It's not like a Word doc opens Word, which is how these usually come in sometimes. And instead, these things just .js, you double-click a .js, boom, scripting host kicks in and infection starts. And that's how most of these. So we saw that these attachments, and then by looking in Windows to say, well, who else has this kind of capability? It's a short list. HTA, WSF, WSH, JSE, JS, VBE, and VBS. And that handful of stuff, we then created a list and said we want to block these at the email gateway. There's no reason our company should receive these file attachments.
Okay, so you looked at the attachments that had been coming in, which ones were valid and which ones weren't, and you got like 0 being valid. Is that what you're trying to say?
That's what I'm trying to say. Now, keep in mind, a legitimate use for these kinds of scripting languages or these scripts do exist, but you can inform your users, especially if they're being blocked email-wise, put them in a zip file and password protect them. So it's a pretty easy educational thing, saying, "Hey, I can't send you a VB script or a payload that might detonate." Well, gee, go figure. Even Google this year blocked JS and JSE scripting as a dangerous mechanism. So even they understand that this stuff should be blocked. But we did it last year, so we're way ahead of Google.
Yeah, and EXEs too. Google doesn't allow straight up executables, which I'm hoping that most gateways don't allow that as well, like email servers.
Well, I think we shouldn't assume anymore. I think the point of this podcast would be to tell people, go check your email gateways and find out or test. I recommend a Hover account. Go get a Hover email account. They don't check or block anything outbound, which means you can send an EXE, a VB script, malware, whatever the heck you want, in a zip file without a password, and Hover will send it out. So it's a great test mechanism. So test your email gateway. What kind of attachments does your organization allow?
Yeah, and they need to be tested from the outside. Don't go internally and send yourself or a colleague something, because that won't hit your gateway.
No, that's just going to go exchange to exchange.
Yeah. All right. So blocking malicious attachments or potentially malicious attachments. And the use case for those would be mostly developers, right? And they're smart enough to figure out, oh, this was blocked. I need to change my method of sending things, right?
Yeah. We all know.
Go figure.
Yeah, we all know that in the course of sending each other batch files, we don't send the .cmd or .bat file. We copy what's in that, paste it in the body of the email message, and then boom, send it away. So developers are smart enough, engineers are smart enough to figure out how to fix this problem. But malwareans are going after the typical user, which is nothing more than the infamous double click that Windows is so prominent for.
Okay, so what was the next iteration that the malwareans did? You started blocking these files, and apparently they started noticing, right? Your level of hits on JS, JSE, WSF went down.
Yeah, shockingly, there was another thing that occurred before that. If you remember, we also implemented the scanning of Word docs. So once you block these file types, they will change their MO and send you different file types. They'll put the scripts inside of something like a Word doc or a PDF.
You sound like you're being targeted, though.
I think
they actually are conscious of, they don't just spray and pray. They actually know that you're blocking these.
So I've said this at my talk, said this in Austin, said this at Rocky Mountain InfoSecCon, and somebody from the DoD did walk up to me after my talk. He says, "I can't tell you anything more, but your assumption that your domain is being monitored, tracked, and or there's analytics on it is correct." So that tells me that there is some success rate that these kits that they're doing on the internet, mass selling these ransomware kits and using that whole delivery mechanism, comes with it some analytics to say what kind of success rate occurs with various domain names. And we saw after about 5 months of these blocks being in place, we were receiving thousands a month, and by the end of last year and up to today, which is June, we've received 0, and I mean 0. Well, I take that back. We received 1 because we didn't believe it, so we had to test it. And I sent us an email to say, "Yep, I got it. That the block is working," because we get copied. I get copied on these emails as they come in. So that's a good thing to test the fact that your blocks are working. But yes, we got 0.
Yeah. So what you did in the gateway was not only did you block these from going to the user, but you sent yourself a copy.
Correct.
So that you could look at them and see, well, is this really malware? Am I blocking the wrong things? Is it actually working?
Yes. When we first turned this on, we were getting maybe hundreds a week. By the time we were done, the months, we were getting thousands a month. Now, we, of course, just have to sample these, but we're also looking for what are they changing? Did they change anything in the scripts that they're sending us? Did some unique thing? The answer was basically no, and then, of course, it died, so there was no need to review them anymore, and now we don't get copied on anything. What we do see now is Word docs with password-protected files. Inside that, VB script.
Now, see, we predicted that, right?
We did
We predicted the next iteration would be documents that are encrypted and the password is in the body of the email.
Yep.
And that actually took place once the blocks of the JSE and and also the malicious Word docs were being blocked at the gateway, all of a sudden these encrypted documents started coming. So what did we do then?
Yeah, we got hundreds of Word docs with macros. We no longer receive Word docs with macros because we dropped those. And that's the cool thing. So they've, through analytics, I assume, I've realized, well, those don't work. Let's send this type of document, which will work. Why? Password protection gets by AV, it gets by your sandboxes, it gets by your advanced malware solutions, your last lines of the world, your Cisco AMPs, your FireEyes, and all that, because it can't inspect a document that has a password on it.
Okay, so they started sending these, which is less than ideal because it involves the user doing a series of things to actually infect themselves. They have to open the doc. They have to take the password out of the body, enter the password, and then they have to click on the alloy object inside the Word doc. So that's a 3-step process that gives the users a lot of opportunity to say, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
So it's less than ideal, but it's the only way to actually get anyone within the company through email infected, right? So they had to resort to this method. And so what did you do? You put in the header or in the subject of the message in the gateway, warning unable to scan. So that was another indicator, right? Of, you may want to think twice before opening this. All right, so that was the next iteration.
Well, the other iteration we saw, we don't see, which kind of surprised me, is Word docs that are password protected, but we're still not seeing macros. So I think somewhere along the line between them switching from macro files to OLE objects, they basically, I think, assumed or concluded that we are blocking with the new Office 2016 and then downward ported macro disabling in Office 2013, that we had enabled that because we just don't see that anymore, where we used to get 10, 20, 100 docs a month. So I think they made two assumptions. Scripts aren't allowed, macros aren't allowed. We're sending you Word docs password protected with OLE objects. Good luck with that one. And that's where we're at today.
All right. So that's the whole progression. Now, did you do anything further? I mean, that sounds pretty good. You're still getting, anything encrypted as an attachment, you get sent a copy to you, right? So you can inspect.
Correct.
And of course, that only takes a couple of seconds. You look at the message for like 1 or 2 seconds and you're like, oh, this is okay. Or, oh, crap, this is a phishing email.
Yeah, they're usually pretty obvious just by looking at the way the message is crafted. They're short. There's not a lot of text in them. The password is somehow obfuscated. They use code. They use phrase. They use all kinds of things to get by those spam filters and outbreak filters.
Yep.
Unlike a real complex email that has all kinds of fancy stuff in there, these things are short, sweet, to the point, and just basically so the user doesn't think, just open.
Yeah, and they usually say like invoice or hey, it's urgent or something like that. All right, so what did you do next to try and prevent the 3-step process of actually getting infected?
Well, like you said, we predicted this ahead of time because we saw this transition of lots of scripts, lots of Word docs with macros, and occasionally these Word docs with OLE objects. And whether they're testing it or whatnot, who knows at that point. But in the course of looking at those, we looked at them and said, well, when you double-click this, it launches the thing. Wait a minute. We could change the way the double-click behavior, deny the double-click behavior, and suddenly the user would now not infect themselves. So we realized that if we change file association on the malicious script types, because keep in mind, right, we blocked the raw script coming in, but they can send you a zip file with it. They can send you a Word doc, a PDF. They can send you a link to a Dropbox. We've seen that. Or a Google Drive. We've seen those as well, where the link then downloads the Word doc, which inside that has OLE object, or downloads the JS script that says employment form or invoice, and the user would then double-click it. So however they can get by your defenses, which they can, there's lots of methods and options, we noticed that it was still the user double-clicking that was the infection point, and that we could actually alter the file association for these malicious types. Instead of automatically doing the host engine, script engine execution, we would just go ahead and say, well, why don't we just open this in Notepad? And now suddenly these things don't detonate.
Yeah, but that affects developers, right?
developers know how to fix this, and they're not double clicking VB scripts. They're going to open them in an editor and do their thing and test them at the command line with the proper way of doing scripting, and not double clicking them in the desktop.
Okay, so in order to change the file association, that's what? One command, right?
You can use the assoc command on the command line, or within the GUI default programs, change file type associations, find your scripted host. There's about 6 entries for that, and then of course be sure to add your HTA to get rid of the HTML automatic execution, and change those all to Notepad. Boom, done.
So even in Word, when you if there's an OLE object in Word, looks like a little icon, user clicks that, it gives them a warning that says, hey, do you want to open this VBS? You say yes, user says yes, and then what happens? If the file association is Notepad, it pops up Notepad?
Pops up Notepad, and you're looking at this very weird obfuscated script, which a user would be able to say is immediately weird because they can't read it. Because these guys, one of the things they do is make the script completely hard to read.
So they can't possibly get themselves infected at that point.
Not unless they want to drop the file to the command line and do it the old-fashioned way, and pretty much only the developers, and they know better. Or security people that do it on purpose.
Right. Okay, so then it wouldn't be possible for a user to infect themselves unless they knew how to execute a script via the command line.
Yeah, they'd have to engineer it. They'd have to go out of their way, really out of their way, to infect themselves.
And what percentage of malware could this prevent? Ransomware.
Oh, well, in our case, in 6 months, 100.
When was the last time you had
Knock on wood.
When was the last time you had someone get ransomware in your environment?
December, but that came from external email source. So it was actually because somebody went to their email, Gmail, I believe it was, and they opened a document within that on their work laptop. It wasn't because it came in through our organization. So we've not seen a ransomware internally since we enabled these things back in a year ago.
So 7 months for that one in an entire year.
Where these rules applied, we've not had any in a year. We have as you know, we have this place, a weird cluster of servers that's used for a specialty item. They got it, but then we applied these rules to that, and now they don't get them either. So the only ones we've gotten is people that have gotten outside our company on their work laptops doing something they weren't supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And the file associations, as they get pushed out, would break that.
All right. So there you go, folks. No ransomware in a year, knock on wood. Yes, knock on the old head, noggin. Anything else? Deny the double click and, deny scripting at the gateway and give yourself a copy of malware so that you can go play around with LogMD and see what these new techniques are, right?
Right. People see this. We tell them, save a file, send it to us, we'll play with it in the lab. The other important part is do this to your mom, your dad, grandma, grandpa, your kids, your wife, small business computers that you know. These people will never notice you made this change. We've done it to my chiropractor. And they can double-click these accidentally now. And if you see a bunch of gibberish in notepads, what I told them, I said, well, next time I'm in, you can tell me and I'll look at it. And so it really is a simple fix for SMBs, which don't have to buy a $100,000 EDR or an Next-Gen AV or do anything funky. This is through GPO if you're a bigger company. Easily done.
Works with all file-based malware. Huh?
All file-based malware. Maybe even fileless, because I think VB script tends to be in those. You can even break PowerShell. You can break PowerShell from launching PowerShell ISE too. Make it open in Notepad.
Wow. Okay. That's it. Tune in next time for another episode of Breaking Down Security. Bye-bye.